will speak about biodiversity, right? We will speak about biodiversity in organic citrus orchard in terms of more an approach to what means biodiversity and what are the roles that what is around the organic citrus orchard normally play in an organic management. For this reason, the first thing to be aware of or to be informed about is about the concept of agro-ecosystem. Normally, we start from our studies from the concept of ecosystem. Here, it's quite just a little bit complicated because the word agro means that there is a agronomic purpose or topic which is included by the work of the man around the orchard. So once we look at the agroecosystem, we should never think only about the orchard with the crops, in this case of citrus, inside the orchards, but what is around even. Because what is around the orchard has a big influence on the crop itself and on the orchard as well. So it's a concept of territory that includes a lot of different aspects that may influence the well-being of the orchard, such as microorganisms, such as substances, and even energy. This concept will be better described later. For instance, having around some orchard shrubs, having around spontaneous crops, having around other kind, even non-cultivated field, may influence the life inside this orchard and could be a change or a modification of the status of organic farming. So we don't have to stick on some old, let's say, concept of orchard like a self-standing entity without any other influence that might come from out of the orchard. But this normally has a big influence on the agronomic management of crops and even economic, because some of the results that we will be able to obtain for the cultivation of citrus in this case is quite influenced from the standing circumstances. This is a small picture. I will not go in detail, but I think it's quite evident what it means. These are the roles of the agroecosystem and the functions, and even something that can influence a lot of consistent characteristics of the orchard, such as humidification, nitrogen, denitrification, that are function of something that is around in the fall of the soil, or something that in a wide concept should be considered even as a landscape. Particularly, I will focus something on weed and pest control, because these have a big influence where they are around our field. And the challenge or the different way of thinking of the organic management of a citrus orchard is based on an evolution of the concept. In the past concept of agriculture, the specialized citrus orchard was based on a structural simplification. What does it mean? That all the things we were doing were, okay, this is my orchard, I will manage it in the best way I can. So I'm considering it as a monoculture. I will not have any kind of cover crops on the soil, and so the soil should be or must be clean. And there must be no other kind of influence coming from upshots or shrubs uproot or other things. I mean, to stay as in a dedicated orchard, I can affirm. But this thing in organic agriculture creates a mislead and have a bad effect. There are dysfunctional consequences of it. Because if we, for instance, don't have any kind of animal that has a pasture inside, there is a pasture chain interruption. And so all the beneficial coming from the good things coming from pastures are negative here. There is no animal manure, there is no natural fertilization, there is a lot of interruption of the chain, and this leads us in the third column as the use or the overuse, let's say, of mineral fertilizers. The monoculture means also that I leave the floor open for the entering of weeds. And so the weeds don't have any kind of possible antagonist in it. And so I must use different herbicides if I'm still not in organic, or PPP, plant protection product, in order to control the weeds. Even the use of mineral fertilizers is increased due to the absence of any other kind of cover crops. And at the same time, the absence of cover crops means that the pest that normally can attack the citrus can become specialized. And there are, even in this kind of orchards, a big appearance or an advanced appearance of phytopathological problems, such as other kind of problems that probably in a well-managed orchard will be not present. And at the same time, I need to use more herbicide, more PPP, and so on. The shrubs, who are not considered as a part of the scenario of these crops, means that there are diminution in weed control if I don't put them around or don't maintain it around. And the pest will increase in numbers just because there are no any kind of control, indirect control, caused by the presence of these shrubs. And so we overuse herbicides and PPP. In this way, the organic citrus orchard must be more a mind concept of the farmer. The farmer must be able to follow some rules. The rules are not written on stone, like usual, but they are, let's say, a good managing of the entire farm specific to the orchard. So we must maintain a high level of soil maintenance and the preservation of its fertility. So all the tools that is the soil manager should be preserved and maintained. The restoration should be of the biodiversity should be a must of our work, because we have to create confusion, as we used to say, around the orchard. And the choice of the most suitable varieties in that area remains a must for us, because we don't have to work with some kind of varieties of rootstocks from one side and citrus from another that can be a problem for production because they are not adapted to the place in which we are making organic citrus orchard. In few words, the two last sentences are fundamental. I must use at the best level that I can the natural resources that I have. So, for instance, the byproducts of the prunings, the cuttings of my farm should be recycled using composting or using other form of return to the soil of the carbon. And so this will lead us to reuse the byproducts of the farm, and in another way, to reduce the number of inputs coming from outside that are mostly one of the damage and one of the presence of some problems in the orchards. This means that also my eye, in terms of observation of the farm, because organic farming is also a big part of observation of landscape, should be adapted to the marginal areas. And so the shrubs, the areas of refuge, and the dry stone or the stone walls that we usually have here in the Mediterranean Sea around is not to be considered like something that must be cut off or not present in my orchard, but are a resource for our goodwill of the orchard. In this way, our work should be to work mainly not only on the orchard, but also on the shrubs, on the groves, on the vegetal corridors, on the field borders, or the uncultivated areas, and sometimes even to use or to make some new plantation of spontaneous nectariferous plants, because they are normally something that can be useful for the citrus agro ecosystem intended as a complicated scenario of orchard. Conventional agriculture, unfortunately, in the past has always considered this as a tear, as something must be avoided. And even in these days, we found some citrus orchards who are without any kind of external inputs, as I call, that are cover crops, that are refuge areas, and whatever. This is a big mistake, because the landscape will enrich, but even our managing, and I will show you how, should enrich from this good operative way. So not only install a new orchard of citrus, but also thinking about sowing plants, put some strips of nectar of crops, and to put also some catch crops becomes the most important part in our preservation of the environment. There is a scheme that we can use in the infrastructures for this kind of orchards. They are the role of ecological infrastructure within the agricultural landscape based on biodiversity. And so there are species should be maintained to allow even things that seem strange, some the arthropods, who are fundamental for some food chain that we are around the field. The empowerment of the so-called ecological services. There is a line of research very wide that is still developing about the organic farming on this way. The use of antagonists, the spread of pollinators, the use of food for predators, and so the complication of the food chain that we have, and some other things such as the buffer zone and so on. So just to recap, please, if you want to manage a landscape in an ecological way or in an agroecological way, forget the left part of the slide with the reductionist approach, in which we think only about the crop, and our target is to destroy whatever we think can be dangerous for us. But speak about the agronomic management, speak about suitable varieties, think about a mind or mental conversion of the farmer to organic farming. Think about the function of biodiversity of the ecosystem, and please don't make comparisons of disease one with the other. Don't think this is the most relevant, because first of thinking what is the most relevant disease that I have, think about what is the state of the art of your citrus orchards in terms of agro-biodiversity. This means also to have a different concept of the disease managing, for instance, in organic citrus orchard. We have to think about what is our agroecology aspect, and so the different thinking should be applied, and even the use of PPP, plant protection products, should be, as far as we can, banded using the beneficial insects, and so antagonists of the one that we do believe are damage for us, small animals, and a different use of inputs. Any organic citrus producer should think about the threshold. The threshold is the threshold of damage that we can have in our field. Some of our yield will be affected by the presence of some other pest or other kind of disease. But in terms of production, this can be an acceptable loss due to the determinate time frame that takes time to be adapted. I would even say out of record, let's say, that the equilibrium is something we should work for. Equilibrium means determining equilibrium from inside and outside the orchard, and this equilibrium will maintain the yield stable among the years in terms of quality and quantity. So everything we have should be defined as a threshold are acceptable or not for our production, in order even to increase the level of sustainability that we have in our orchard. Another big concept that should be underlined in this kind of new way of approach the organic citrus orchards is the biocenosis. Biocenosis is considered as a definition of the biological association of different species of plants or animals living in a mutual relationship in a given ecological environment. It's not easy to measure, but there are some publications or data that we can find very easily even around the web or the publication scientific on it. Because if we consider, for instance, like observation, this was done from our Italian researchers since 30 years ago, and we have an organic citrus orchard, and we do measure the number of pests, parasites that we have, this number is roughly about 200. So in a complex agro-ecosystem, we found 2 different species of pests, for instance. But if we go to investigate after recognition which kind of pest this can damage our orchard, we found that the number that can really damage the orchard is around 10. The other 190 are not so bad for our orchard. In some cases, they are predators. They are entomophages. They are an easy way to control some damages through, they are beneficials in poor words. So this equilibrium is our target, and this should be helped with a limited number of chemical treatments, the ones who are necessary, and some of the most important problems that you probably listened to in the other courses of my colleagues that took place in the past days can be easily controlled without avoiding use of any chemicals, but using only beneficials, because beneficials, but in a long-term process of approach and treatment and use of them, can give a good stability to the level of attack. There will be always a threshold of damaged fruits, but I don't care if my aim is the stability of the production among the time. For this reason, we have to think about even about the strategy that we have to think about in agronomic strategy. So soil treatments or fertilization patterns should be adapted to this new way of thinking. For instance, the weed management must be done using appropriate machine that can be sometimes different from the one that in conventional agriculture are used, such as the shredders, for instance. We must maintain the herbaceous biomasses in the soil, in which there is always plenty of entomofauna, who are insects or other kind of animals, that can accommodate and can be an easy, even pattern for the work of the bees, who are fundamental for our even orchards. The milling machines should be taken account how to use them, because normally there is a mistake here. I'm sorry, I'm speaking about spring. In the use of the beginning of spring, the use of cutters can be dangerous for our crops, because normally we can have a stagnation of the water on the surface, and this one is a bad habit for the arrival of new other phytopathies, such as the one that is present on the color of the trunks or on the roots of the citrus plants as well. Fertilization and irrigation, you have here a picture of them, should be based on the use of animal compost or better compost as well. For instance, a byproduct of the work of the transformation of citrus can be recycled as compost. In Italian, the name is pastazzo, in order to prepare a quality compost to return to the soil. And even the irrigation should be used in a wise way, considering that we have two entities to get in touch. One is about the climatic changes that unfortunately needs now, even for the citrus orchards, a larger amount of water due to this unfortunately consecutive year-by-year moment of heat that can be present in the orchard. But from another way, the wise use of it, it's important in order not to waste the water and not to consider it as a waste of money in its managing. Shrubs and cover crops are even fundamental, because the cover crops hosts normally a large number of beneficials. And the large number of beneficials should be limited or applied and used in a good, let's say, combination with the shrubs and the other spontaneous crops that we have around. And so the analysis or even the observation of this spontaneous crops is linked, because normally they are host of some beneficial. Could be parasitoids, could be predators, but we know that we have some kind of crops, we will have even the predators or the parasitoids that can be a system of control of the most important pest. Shrubs are fundamental for an ecological point of view, and even for because they host these beneficials. So they are, for instance, good for the aphids control. And other, even about overflies diptera, for instance, can be another system in which we create an indirect control of the pest. These are examples, visual examples of what could be able. You see on the left and the right side some citrus big one orchards, and in the middle we have fava bean. or we have a mixed cultivation, because we must not think only about the spontaneous crops, but we must think even about something that could be in touch with the cultivated crops. And in terms of mixture of them, could be annual crops, can be for animal feeding, it could be something that in which the mixed farm could be in touch with the use of citrus inside. At the same time, the shrubs is able to, sorry, 1 minute, is able to create with the other shrubs some other kind of complication. And so the other picture is the creation of spontaneous crops with another cultivated crops beneath or near the citrus orchards, in order to create sometimes the possibility to have complication of the agro-ecosystem. These are other examples. If you want, and even during the discussion, I can make a list of this kind of crops that seems spontaneous and seems to create such a jungle around the citrus orchard, but these are fundamental, because in some period of the year they can host beneficials, or they can be even a soil amendment in terms of fresh organic matter that can be incorporated directly into the soil. Normally, during the summer period, this can become a problem in the Mediterranean Sea. The abundance of water, which is necessary as well for the good cultivation of the citrus orchards, is fundamental. But this kind of behavior are even important, such as the use of alfalfa, as you see on the right side, in order to increase the biodiversity from one side and the level of organic matter that can be immediately used from the crops directly in the first centimeters of the soil. At the same time, the pruning and mechanical barriers are something we have to use. I included this in my presentation, even if it's not exactly the agrobiodiversity, but normally we see them in the orchards. I would like to include, even to show that there are some other technical way to control some pests, such as the mechanical barriers, made of glue, made of glass, made of glass wool sometimes, because we avoid the presence of other pests or mealybugs, such as on the canopy, because they are a physical barrier. And even the pruning is some delicate moment around the citrus, because we would like to create aeration between the canopy. The canopy normally suffer of the presence of humidity, and this humidity is a good moment in which the Planococcus citri, or the mealybug, can enter, and this is still something that we would like to avoid in the orchards in terms of pest of it. From the meeting that we had between Spain, Italy, Greece, we found that this behavior in the organic citrus producers is something that a lot of them are doing, and some of the different zones of Mediterranean Sea have different problems, but the way in which we can manage is more or less the same. Another point, which is not listed in the presentation, is that in order to have beneficials, these beneficials should be easily, let's say, available from the farmer. What does it mean? We do believe in this institute, and I've seen that even in Spain, we think as well the same. There must be around the citrus orchard managed in organic farming, the presence of a source of these beneficials. And the source of this beneficial means terms that I don't know how many of you know, is named insectarium. Is a rearing facility of insects, beneficial as well, in that we can use very often, depending on the main pest, depending on the strategies of control them with beneficials among the year. The repetition of the launches of them, the use of them, the monitoring of them, and the level of damage returns to define the threshold that we were discussing before, among the level of damage that we would like to have in order to maintain a stable production among the years. These were more or less the most important informations about that. And of course, there can be a lot of other material, data, information, videos about that. But for the moment, I stop here because I would like the people to ask me something about some comments or their own experience on it. Thank you for your attention at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Verastro, for your nice presentation and clear one. We have two questions. I think lady first, we will start with Rania Rashdi. Rania Rashdi, could you ask your question directly to Dr. Verastro? Rania? Otherwise, I will read it directly. The question was, no. What is the best irrigation system we can use in citrus, organic citrus orchard?
Okay, about the best tool, drip irrigation remains the best one, but depends on the quality of the production we want to achieve. In the young orchards, we normally have the drip irrigation as a good one. But once we came to a big tree, the drip irrigation cannot be so performant. So using some spray or sprinkle could be the best one. But what is most important about the way in which we use the irrigation is about the turns. It's about how many hours per day we want to use. This is more useful if we come to some tools that now are quite diffused among even the organic citrus orchards, who are so-called Internet of Things tool. That means that to have some parameters about the stress level of the crop or of the roots should be better in order to increase or decrease the number of irrigation. Because sometimes in the citrus orchards, we find a lot of dispersion of the water because we irrigate without any sense, because the really moment of irrigation should be once the crop goes in stress. But this stress should be measured. So we know that near the harvesting or near the flowering, there is necessity to have more irrigation for a good quality of fruit. But sometimes we are not able to use the correct amount of water in the correct place. Varieties are fundamental because sometimes they are more exigent or not in terms of water, but climate makes unfortunately, in the past year, a big role in the choice of the method and the choice of availability of water, because we don't have only this amount of water that we need more sometimes.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And we have two other questions from Fakhr Ayad. Okay. So hello. Please.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, morning. How are you, Mr. Verastro?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I just, my first question is about, in some organic regulations, we found a fixed rate of land farm dedicated to organic, to biodiversity. For example, in biodynamic regulations, Demeter, we found they fix 10%. Okay. Do you have any idea about the method to use it to fix these rights? It's the same for the bioswales.
The discussion will take a lot of time. First of all, biodynamic aspects or certification is based on internal rules. That means that they start from the organic certification scheme in Europe, stated from EU regulation, and they sometimes they go over. That means that they would like to be more restrictive. Once the restrictions are based on a more, let's say, careful way to manage the agrobiodiversity, I think they are always positive. Better to have a less production and a better quality than the opposite. From another point of view, to define a percentage or a number should be a mass number, because in some condition, in some landscapes, in some aspects, even regional aspects, this level of 10%, 5%, 15% should be respected or not be in line with the managing of the farm. The way is not what is the percentage, the way in which I apply this one. Because if around my orchard there is a landscape, let's say, untouched, or at least not far from a natural landscape, the level of complexity, the level, I will say, of confusion of pests that they can have could be useful for the orchard. But to fix a number is complicated. Depends more on some, let's say, list that they would like to respect. This does not mean that I don't trust. It means that I will be happy if any kind of scheme of certification should be or must be adapted to the orchard we consider. So biodynamic, organic are certification schemes at the end of the story. But what I would like to stress, I didn't speak about certification in my presentation, is about the way of thinking of the farmer. If we think about the yield and only, we made a mistake in organic management. If we think about what is useful for us, for the environment, and for the quality of the production, probably is the best solution or the best approach.
Okay, thank you. For my second question, I have a question concerning the adoption of some techniques and practices in the choice to have to practice some techniques. I think it's a relation in direct relation with the climate. It is in the same in the arid as in humid. For example, for cover crop, it's appreciated in humid more than in arid. I think the climate has an important direct relations with biodiversity or with local biodiversity.
But well, my experience goes around mostly of Mediterranean countries. The situation of citrus cultivation is quite different if you think about, for instance, the southern part of the sea or the northern part of the sea. Characterizing mainly about climate, which is mostly comparable in different ways. But what is necessary, as we started since the beginning here in Mediterranean Agronomic Institute, is to define which landscape you are dealing with. This works for all kinds of crops, not only for citrus. What does it mean? It means that, first of all, there should be, hopefully, some local varieties that are better adapted to the climate situation. So the first choice should be about the local varieties, if it's possible. But the market makes the rules. So sometimes you have to use some international varieties, in orange, in whatever you think about, in order to produce them for the international market or the export. This is good and not good, because you have to think about, first of all, to valorize your own production, because these ones are sometimes adapted to the climate. The use of some spontaneous crops, or the mixture of them, depends even on which are the most adapted to that kind of crop. The use of alfalfa, we know, requires a certain amount of water. And if you have water, alfalfa should be, for instance, suggested. But if you don't have water, you should use some other kind of cover crops that are mostly based on your climate situation. What we stressed here in Puglia region is to work with forages ones that, such as beans or fava beans, that are most adapted to our climate and better fit even around the citrus orchard, in order to maintain a biodiversity that is linked to this kind of crops. Every place should be, or every part of the Mediterranean Sea should have its own strategy and philosophy. But please consider what I told you in my presentation. Your strategy of adaptation of the right crop or the right mixture of annual crops should be tested several years, because the results do not come immediately. If you try to move to another kind of crop, you must wait for the environment to set and to understand if there are differences, or could be the wrong choice, because can happen even this.
Okay, just I have my last question. What's your opinion concerning till and no till related with with biodiversity?
It's the last question.
According to your experience, okay? Because we
Yeah,
found some
a
it's
very
with
long
and
answer.
others.
Well, soil is fundamental for any crop, not only for citrus orchards in the first centimeter. So whatever this is the most important suggestion, and unfortunately, I'm sorry for you, but I must stop here about the quality of answer. The less you movement the soil, the better it is. This does not mean that you don't have to make things, because sometimes they are necessary. I told you, I show you even a picture in which citrus orchard seems a jungle in which becomes difficult even to walk in or to make operations such as even the harvesting. But managing in the right way depends on the habits that you have in your place, and depends even on the level of fertility you want to maintain. In general, the mulching or the other kind of things that preserve the first centimeters of soil, 10, 20, around the crops is the better strategy. The less you movement, the better it is. But it's a general statement. Each one should be adapted to his own situation. Sorry to be so short, but I must leave the floor to the others. Of course, we go in details.
Thank you very much, Mr. Erastus. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mrs. Nawal.
Sorry for your question. No, it's okay. We have another question from Abdurrahman Ibrahim. Abdurrahman, Ibrahim, are you here? Okay. The question was, is the organic regulation
Part of agriculture.
Yeah, sorry?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
Go for it, Danaman.
Yes, the question was that for the burning the wastes after the pruning,
I've seen the
there is organic regulation.
No,
yes,
organic
is organic regulations.
Yeah, organic does not make any kind of regulation about burning, non-burning. Organic makes some suggestion about what to do. So whatever it's, let's say, not composed from plastic or whatever things, in the organic farming philosophy and application should be recycled. This means that another fundamental thing is to recycle what we used to call byproducts, prunings, whatever, wastes, but of organic origin. This means that you have to produce, as far as you can, compost. Compost is not using the fresh material as it is to be incorporated into the soil, but is to transform in a more or less stable organic matter what are the byproducts in order to feed the soil, because the soil will feed the crop in a second moment. And so to work, as usual, in these small centimeters that you have, in which normally a lot of microorganisms are living and present, and who are fundamental even for the goodwill of your crop. Burn, to my personal opinion, should never happen. But sometimes if you have problems due to gomosis, as I told you before, or some other problem that affects your citrus orchard, this part should be cut, pruned, and burned outside the field, because they can be more dangerous than the others, because they can be transferred to other crops.
Well noted. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. We have another question from Abnezer. Wandima.
Okay, hello.
Sorry for my pronunciation.
No problem.
So
For us, your name should be your surname. For me, it's I don't try. Anyway.
Okay, my name is Ebenezer from Ethiopia.
Thanks.
So I have understand from the discussion that weed and pests are the most challenging for citrus production. So my question is regarding the pest. As we know, the floral biology or flower characteristics of the citrus, they have the more attractive scent, fragrance, and appearance for pollinator.
Yeah,
it's known. So can we say that this floral characteristic of the citrus lead more exposed for the pest attack? Do you believe that?
No. I believe that what we are perceiving, I'm speaking like human beings, are something who are, of course, in a list or in a set of flavors or odors, as you want to call them. But what the pest uses is not based on our perception. The pest is used about pheromones, on other kind of characteristics. So the level of attack of the pest in citrus is always often, if you have two situations. One that unfortunately is becoming often and often more important in the Mediterranean Sea is the attack of the so-called emerging pests. So new pests coming from other parts of the world that have been imported in the Mediterranean Sea, and they are without any kind of natural enemies, they have done any kind of parasitoids or predators, and you find sometimes a sort of a big number of attacks linked to this pest. The other ones, such as I show you an example, the mealybugs, are here since a long time, and they can easily control observing like they work or don't work on the citrus. Mealybugs can be, let's say, depicted or described even about, for instance, the presence of the ants, because in some period they are transferred in the upper part of the crop directly by the ants. So the level of the ants is a sort of, we call ringing bell about the possible attack of the mealybugs on them. But if we know what is the state of the evolution of the mealybug, we can use the beneficials. I can affirm that in organic citrus orchards of the southern part of Puglia or Sicily, who are the two most important places, including even the region between, with Calabria and Basilicata, from Puglia and Sicily, the number of attacks due to mealybugs can be easily controlled with the use of beneficials. So, the flowering is, of course, a source of, let's say, pheromones or substances that can attack the pest, can attract the pest. But from another point of view, as I told you, the presence of large shrubs around, of untouched agroecology landscape, means that there will be a lot of confusion. So if you enter in one orchard during September, August, even October, according to the climate situation, speak about Mediterranean Sea, you are from Ethiopia, so probably the months of the year could be completely different. But speaking about us, the confusion, the level of presence of a lot of insects is a good news. Because as I told you, the measurements that we have done since the late 90s in the southern part of Italy can tell us that the number is around 200 of different species, but only 10 of them are real damaging the citrus, and the others, the remaining, the leftover, could be some controlling pest in terms of parasitoids or in terms of predators. So we would like to encourage the number of biodiversity and the launch of other beneficials because they are able to control other kind of situations, such as the one that you were informed about. Us before.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next one is the question of Laszlo, please. Laszlo?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Hi. It's nice to see all the work with beneficials. We are getting good results in the south of Spain, putting beneficials in the trees. On the ends, I can comment that there is a sticky paste you can put around the trunk to keep the ends down. So that's also a way of, well, not letting them be transported. But now we are working for quite some time on the upper part and on banker plants for your beneficial insects, also in outdoor. Because some questions on the cover crops come. And now more and more we're looking also into below ground. Because you have a tree, and trees generally, if you go in a natural system, have mycorrhizal fungi and all kinds of beneficial soil organisms that really help them with water use efficiency, nutrient use efficiency.
Absolutely.
Do you have some experiences in citrus you can share with some, for example, mycorrhiza or others?
Yeah, about mycorrhiza, the tests are still on the way, so not definitive data. Let's say that, as I told at the beginning, the use of some new things. Well, you work in Spain, as far as I know, as far as you told us, or not?
I work globally. I'm doing the tropical crops. You can see banana in the back.
Yeah,
Good results, very good results with mycorrhiza in banana.
That's why I would like to stress that unfortunately there is a bad chain situation. We have, I'm speaking about Italy. Spain, I know, is quite different. What does it mean? We have differences. We have difficulties sometimes in placing on the market the citrus, even the organic, because the market has not a good price of return to the farm. So the incomes that can come from the organic should be something that should be specialized at that kind of market. Why I told you this? Because this sometimes is an obstacle in making some research activities. And what is necessary to do is to create a community. Okay. If you have worked in Spain, I think that you know that a lot of people here are organized very well, because people, even from the organic movements, such as IFOAM or whatever, are able to make them to sit around one table and to discuss about the problems that you have in your region, in my region. For instance, we did several times in BioFluidNet, and we found that some problems are more present here in my country than in Spain, and vice versa. This means that every place, every situation, including the mycorrhiza, should be tested in different aspects or in different lands or in different countries, because they can work as well, good or not good in some places. But in my personal opinion, this I'm sorry if I repeat myself, that all the things are useful and well used. Mycorrhiza have been tested several times here in the southern part of Puglia for local farmers that we follow. They performed very good. But I do believe that the final judgment will come after several years of application, because normally we would like to use it because some consultant, researcher as well, told, please, why don't you use this, because they are useful for me. And so there is the effect that everybody wants to use it. They use only for 1 year without any strategy, without any program, without any monitoring of them. And they can say good things or bad things in order only to 1 year of application. That is not enough to make a concrete and efficiency judgment on it. That's my opinion. I'm not against or in favor. I would like to test, and I would like to have a scientific monitoring of it.
Okay, I agree. We would be willing to collaborate on that.
Why not?
Why also not? Combining them with the cover crops, because you need living
cover crops. We have tested the mycorrhiza. I have to move to another kind of crop, of course. But this is the philosophy in general of the countries. We tried the use of mycorrhiza on olive orchards, but not for problems, but for a big, huge problem that is named Xylella fastidiosa, which is a bacteria that attacked mainly the crops of the southern part of Puglia. Mycorrhiza did not perform, but unfortunately, it was one-shot application, as I told you. So we tried one time, we never tried it again. A long term should be the right one, and I think as well for the citrus orchard.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We will follow. Thank you, Laszlo. We will follow the discussion with Samir. Samir?
Hello.
Hi, Samir.
Hi, Samir.
Hi, how are you? Okay, first of all, I have to thank you for the presentation. My question is about what is your approach about the weeding in citrus orchard? In order to both maintain the biodiversity of floristic and phonistic.
I think that your question.
And at the same time to protect the citrus from pests. What's the
I got it. First of all, I think that your question is the same. No, it's a suggestion how to manage naturally occurring plants, cover ground, in order to maintain insect biodiversity and citrus. Yes. Yes. So my opinion is the one that I stated before. And I didn't make any slide with a list of crops. Why? Not because I don't want. I have a list of hundreds of essences. Some of them are spontaneous, some are cultivated, and mixture of them. But they are able to be applied locally because probably they work better in the citrus orchard, considering the place of the world in which you are. I don't know where you are from, Samir. But the first thing to do is to make an investigation of what are the most common spontaneous crops in your country, your place, your own landscape, your region, I don't know. And after having this information or available even on the web, to be aware of their mixture and to make some tests, because the role of, and to make the measurements is what we have done here in the 90s, in the late 90s. The mixture of the most common crops that were used even for animal farming, for pasture, should be something that should be used as well in the orchards, if it's possible, citrus, of course, if it's possible, because sometimes you have to base your work on legumes, on animal crops, and probably, Samir, you belong, as we belong, to a place in which water scarcity is becoming a must in the past years, as well as everywhere in the Mediterranean Sea. So the use of these crops, annual crops, who have not a big request of water for irrigation, should be important, because otherwise they can enter, if you have less amount of water, in competition as well with the citrus orchards. The managing depends on this. I don't have any kind of receipt, because a receipt can't be applicable everywhere, because you need to know the landscape in which you are. That's why in my presentation I told you, please consider not exactly the citrus orchard, but consider first of all what you have around. The more spontaneous it is, the better it is, because you have to think about what is important and what all you have around and which kind of influence they have on your orchard. That's the first thing to do. There are indicators about that, are biodiversity indicators that you can apply, but it's another stuff, and to go in deep, not half an hour, as I told her. Well, we need a couple of days probably to have certain, let's say, investigation. I hope you get an answer from me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. We have raised hands. We will start with Frank Kirk. Frank?
Yes. Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, and actually thank you for all the presentations since Tuesday. It was very interesting. I just want to add something about mycorrhized and mycorrhization and everything, just to say that in our studies in Corsica, because you have to know that we grow citrus also in France and in Corsica island. I
was aware of.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure. No, but for next projects, for instance, just think about French citrus, not only French apricots. Just to say that we realize that if your soil is healthy and if your soil is living, you already have mycorrhized trees with citrus. So the very important point we have to say, and you talk about it a little bit, it's just for organic citrus orchard, you need a good soil, you need a living soil, you need an earthy soil. Earthier is your soil, easier is the citrus production. We used to talk about all the area, the upside of the tree, the grass, the trees, the leaves, the branches, but you have to think also roots, soil, and the life you have in your soil. Just wanted to add that maybe it's not just useful to put more mycorrhizas, but just to have a healthy soil. Thank you.
Healthy soil is fundamental as well. Thank you, Frank, for this precision puntualizations. I'm quite curious to know which kind of citrus you are dealing with in Corsica, but I think I know mostly. But what is quite important is to think about, make a picture as well as you can of what you have around your orchards and what it is inside your orchard, because problems maybe sometimes are linked to the lack of equilibrium that you need to create in the orchards of citrus, because this is fundamental. Even the distance between crop and crop, even the varieties, even the fact that you want more yield because you think they produce more can be sometimes more relevant for our incomes is not always true. Depends on the situation that you have, because this can be more yield but more price or more costs in terms of PPP or whatever. Thanks for your for this statement. The next is Timumi Amara.
Yes, yeah,
right?
Yeah. Mr. Timumi?
My question is about
good morning. My question is about method to control nematode in organic citrus and a relation between biodiversity and control the effect of nematode in organic citrus. Merci.
But even in this kind of situation, there is no strategy. Of course, the strategy is about, first of all, knowing which kind of nematodes you are dealing with. And so the first thing should be to take some samples, to analyze, to understand what are the possible nematodes that affects the citrus, and then understand if there is a solution. You know from my side that in organic, the tools that you have against nematodes are based mainly on rotation schemes. This is complicated, thinking about a perennial crop like the citrus. And so dealing with them, first of all, investigation, monitoring, presence of damages, understand if the nematodes are, mostly they are vector of something, viruses normally, and thinking about which kind of variety resistant you can place, should be a change of variety, should be a rootstock that can be resistant. There are several tools, but first of all, investigation, understand what is the real nature of the problem, the entity of the problem, and then thinking and make an action plan about it. I don't have products that can be efficient against them if I don't know what I'm dealing with. I think this is the best answer that I can give you, Dr. Timumi. It's difficult to reply in a, let's say, straight way. This one, use this and you will be safe. No, I never say this.
Yes, merci. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Vincenzo, what do you think? We stop here, or you want to
I don't know what time is
answer?
12.
Yeah. What do you prefer?
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you for this great presentation. A lot of information in short time. Thank you. I want to ask about if we want to establish a new orchard, what's the best spaces between the trees? And are there any relation between the infection of pests and the spaces between trees?
There is no, as for Dr. Timumi, I think there is no the same, more or less is the same answer. There is no distance, there is no length, there is no. First of all, and this is more from an agronomic point of view, you should think about what is the state of the art in your area. So think about soil analysis, think about water availability, think about water quality and soil quality are fundamental. Then, according to your climatic region in the southern Mediterranean Sea, from your name, I do suppose you are not from France, or not exactly from Northern Europe. I do believe you are from the southern Mediterranean shores of the Mediterranean Sea. You should investigate, first of all, if you are local varieties that are better adapted to that. Then depends on what you need from. First of all, it's important to create a complication of the agroecosystem. So is this a wild place in which you want it without any kind of cultivation? It's a wild one in which there are even other kind of spontaneous crops, shrubs, or other kind of trees around? Good. Are you able to investigate which kind of complexity of the agroecosystem you have that around? Nice. But my suggestion is always to not think about the yield as a first results of the investment of a new orchard. First of all, I will think always about the quality. And I will think about even the possibility to establish a monitoring system of the problems you have around. This for two reasons. First of all, because problems will come, but as I told you as I told you all during my presentation, there is a threshold. They should be able to evaluate, even if it's possible for someone that has around you some other orchard of citrus, conventional as well, no problem. It even could be a good comparison effort. The second one is to think about which kind of problems you are going to face. If water scarcity or water use efficiency is something you can't guarantee, this is important in order to define even the nature of the distances. In Tunisia, for instance, even in other kind of crops, we have seen that as soon as you go south, the distance between the crops enlarges, because the water scarcity is a fundamental problem. And so if they don't have water, they do prefer to have a less amount of crops per hectare instead of a larger number, because the production level and the quality of them will be dangerous for all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Verrastro. I shared the second survey in the chat, and I invite all the participants to answer. And maybe we can continue with the other question. Verrastro, if you agree on that.
No
It's
worries.
okay for you?
Yeah.
Perfect. I invite Abed Hadj to ask his question, please. Abed? Okay, the question is, does the using cover crop as cash crop impose problems to citrus orchards regarding the competition for nutrient and disease infestation?
Yeah. The question comes from?
Sorry?
Nawel, the question comes from?
Abed Hadj.
Okay. Even in this case, I don't have a fixed or defined answer. Catch crops and cover crops could be useful or not useful, depends on their combination, depends on the environment, depends on the mixture, depends on the way you plant them, depends on the way you harvest them, depends on the way you want to incorporate into the soil. The competition is possible, of course, but we normally speaking about an citrus orchard, we are speaking about a large crop one. So the competition is fundamental only if you have young crops to manage. If you have big crops, normally this competition does not exist. The level of yield is your target. It's not a competition of catch crops or cover crops. It's quite fundamental to define what we are dealing with also for the choice. What I can tell you is that during our practice abstract of the project, BioFruitNet or something similar, we will define a list of these crops that normally can be used or mixed together in order to avoid competition or to get in favor, even to be a catch one that maintains something that can be nutrients in general. And so some kind of family of the crop are more useful than others, but really becomes difficult from my side to give you a defined answer. It's only a way of application. In some defined circumstances or better areas, I can give you some more behavior, and this will be listed in the practice abstract.
Thank you. And Slabber, the next one is the question from Slabber. Slabber, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Yes, please.
I have cover crops in my orchard, but I found that it was quite difficult because cattle would eat the citrus as well. So do anybody have strategies on how to manage grazing with cover crops in citrus orchards?
Well, I don't know where you come from, Mrs. Labber.
South Africa.
Africa,
Sorry,
yeah.
South Africa.
About this, no, because unfortunately the location is fundamental. Normally there are a lot of studies coming from the French units, not so much on citrus, of course, but they can be applied, about the churn of the pastures. There are some problem of overgrazing sometimes, or overpasturing as well, because the number of animals can be a bad situation for the crops. Not in terms, sometimes, as you said in your question, about, let's say, hygiene requirements, because normally, if they only make pasture, they can have the lay down of their fecal residuals, but they are not dangerous for the field. but the number of hours in which they maintain their presence in the orchards could be important. So normally we don't suggest to have a permanent pasture within the orchards, but to create some turns, some number of hours. And if it's possible, but I don't know your situation, to movement these sheep or what animals in general, these herds, from one place to the other, because the rotation of the pastures are fundamental, even to maintain from one side biodiversity, from the other side a good level of fertility, avoiding the competition of the crops.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Slaber. Okay, the next one is Moses Maugu.
Yeah, thanks again for the presentation. I think mine is, I'm sorry that we are asking so many questions about cover crops. Also, my question is also the same, managing cover crops, and at what point do you consider cover crops as a weed or as problematic, and how do you maintain that balance? That's my question. Thanks.
Good question, difficult answer in a few minutes. There is not a big level. It's up to you, first of all. Observation is the key answer. This I'm sure about. A cover crop must or should have its efficacy in terms of water saving, in terms of soil coverage, in terms of, as possible as it is, soil incorporation, and so organic fresh material, organic fresh matter from the roots, for the roots. Sometimes they are in combination with irrigation, and so they grow much more when there is the drop or the sprinkle or whatever it is, and you have something more in that area that around. But a full coverage of the soil based with this kind of cover crops is another fundamental issue, because you preserve such a sort of canopy, all the soil from be not too hot, or during the summer period in this, or during the winter period not to be too cold. So the efficacy of the cover crops and their nature adapted to their situation should be evaluated time by time. I told you, I repeat more or less same concept. There are indicators about it, and there are a mixture of them that are suggested for every region of the Mediterranean Sea. We are discussing with Spain to find some mixture that can be in common, but considering my region and their region in which they have citrus, normally we are speaking about southern Mediterranean countries in which more or less the crops that we can use are similar. In other part of Mediterranean Sea, I've seen that there is a lot of clementine, for instance, since Frank Kurk told us. Probably the climate situation could be quite different, but we are moving to this climate changing situation. So to define a strategy is not easy. To define a list of possible entities to mix together could be the best solution. We will try to manage this even in the network.
Okay, thank you very much. I will ask. Thank you. The audience, if there is any other question or comment, just to raise the hand. I think no more question.
Thanks for your attention. So I think we have to put the questions now.
In the chat, but I think we can also answer them later on by email and also during the e-learning courses. I would like only to remember the audience that the three session for the organic citrus will be available. The video recording, presentation in PDF form, plus additional material, practice abstracts, scientific papers, and more material will be available in the CM Bari e-learning course platform.
And sorry if I interrupted, because in this line of the practice abstracts, specifically, even considering the lecture of our colleague Sabina, there is a question from Abed Haji about the release of Cryptolemus, in which normally is good, is in our practice abstract, works very much, but you need to do it several times year by year. If you make only one launch of it, I can affirm that it will not work perfectly. But please, Noel.
Okay, just to add, also in the e-learning platform, we will have a forum, live forum, where all the participants can interact between them and also with the instructor. That means with Dr. Verastro, Dr. Geloueh, and also Dr. Avozani. I thank all the participants for their interest, also for the constructive discussion they offered us during the 3 sessions. I would like also to thank all our speakers, Dr. Verastro, Dr. Geloueh, and also Dr. Avozani. And it was also my pleasure to moderate all the session. And I hope to see you in the e-learning platform. We will contact you to give you more information and also the credential to access to the platform in the upcoming days. Thank you very much for your participation. Bye.
See you online.
Ciao, ciao.